रहकर अपने स्थान पर ही मौन धारण करें और उन्हें श्रद्धांजलि अर्पित करें। धन्यवाद। माननीय उपराष्ट्रपति श्री एम वेंकैया नायडू, माननीय पूर्व राष्ट्रपति श्री प्रणब मुखर्जी, सामाजिक न्याय और अधिकारिता मंत्री माननीय श्री थावरचंद गहलोत, राज्यसभा के उपसभापति माननीय श्री हरिवंश जी, सूचना एवं प्रसारण और खेल एवं युवा मामलों के मंत्री माननीय कर्नल राज्यवर्धन राठौर, वाइस प्रेसिडेंट सेक्रेटेरिएट में सचिव डॉक्टर आई.वी. सुब्बा राव, केंद्रीय सूचना और प्रसारण सचिव माननीय श्री अमित खरे और सभागार में उपस्थित सभी गणमान्य अतिथियों का हम इस समारोह में तहे दिल से स्वागत करते हैं, अभिनंदन करते हैं। Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Information and Broadcasting Ministry, we welcome you all to this function specially organized for the release of the book of selected speeches of Shri M. Venkaiah Naidu, Honorable Vice President of India, published by the Publication Division of the Ministry. It is said that words and ideas can change the world. John C. Maxwell said, and I quote, "People may hear your words, but they feel your attitude," unquote. Indeed, words are important, and words of learned and experienced men act as guiding light for others. Hence, the Publication Division of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting publishes the speeches of dignitaries of India, and today, release of this book of speeches of Honorable Vice President of India, Shri M. Venkaiah Naidu, will not only enrich their collection, but will also be a source of inspiration for many. अब मैं माननीय सूचना और प्रसारण मंत्री कर्नल राज्यवर्धन राठौर से स्वागत संबोधन के लिए अनुरोध करती हूं।
Shri Venkaiah Naidu ji, the Vice President of India, Shri Pranab Mukherjee ji, former President of India, Shri Thawarchand Gehlot Sahab, Minister for Social Justice, Shri Subba Rao ji, Secretary to Vice President, Shri Amit Khare ji, Secretary Information and Broadcasting Ministry, Shri Harivansh ji, Deputy Chairman, Rajya Sabha, dignitaries who are present here from friendly nations, all the guests who come here from covering large distances, friends from the media who are present here, the young students who are seated right behind in the auditorium. I welcome all of you on this occasion when the Vice President's speeches that he's covered in the last 1.5 years are being released today. Before we begin this function, let us all remember men in uniform, I would say men and women in uniform, who guard our nation, the sacrifices they make, they and their families. No act of terror can ever stop this country from advancing ahead, from moving forward. India is resolute to wipe out terrorism, to stand together. And this is a great example when soldiers from different states, different corners of the country have attained martyrdom in the dastardly attack of yesterday. I've served with the Vice President, and it's been a great honor of having been served with him. His wisdom, his wit, his vision is all reflected in the speeches that are now catalogued in this book. बचपन से माननीय उपराष्ट्रपति जी एक किसान का जीवन जिया और उनका पूरा अनुभव अपने बचपन से लेकर आज तक पिछले 1.5 साल में उन्होंने तकरीबन 600 स्पीचेस दी अलग अलग इश्यूज के ऊपर, फ्रॉम एजुकेशन टू नेशनल सिक्योरिटी, फ्रॉम एग्रीकल्चर एंड कल्चर टू science and technology. The number of speeches that he's delivered have been basically categorized into 6 broad sections: functioning of the legislator, nation and nationalism, polity and governance, economic development, media, India and the world. For any student having to read his entire experience put together in a book, which is also going to be available in e-format after the launch, is going to be helpful not just for as a means of reference, but also as a very interesting read, looking into his life, his experiences, how he's experienced our country and how he's changed it. This book has been published by the Publication Division, which is part of our Information Broadcasting Ministry. It is mandated to publish speeches of people in high offices in our country. I congratulate Publication Division for a very meticulous work that they have done in bringing out not just this, but other quality publications as well. Like I mentioned earlier, today's world, today's young generation should be able to read all these books in simpler formats, and therefore the Publication Division and the Ministry of Information Broadcasting has made an effort that these books are all available on online retail as well as in e-formats, making things easier. To sum up, let me quote from the beautiful Vedic prayer, Tamsoma Jyotirgamaya. Let me from darkness of ignorance to the light, lead me from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge. This is our mandate, our endeavor, and this event once again brings testimony of our efforts. So I wish greater glory to all such efforts in the future. Thank you so much, and I once again welcome all of you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी के मार्गदर्शन में हमारे देश में सामाजिक न्याय को मजबूती देने की दिशा में और देश में अनुसूचित जाति जनजाति के साथ साथ दिव्यांग जन को भी सशक्त करने और उन्हें आगे बढ़ने के अवसर प्रदान करने और उन्हें देश में अच्छी कंट्रीब्यूशन के लिए मजबूत आधार देने में अहम रोल अदा कर रहे हैं केंद्रीय सामाजिक न्याय और अधिकारिता मंत्री वरिष्ठ नेता श्री थावरचंद गहलोत। अब मैं माननीय श्री थावरचंद गहलोत जी से अनुरोध करती हूं कि वे इस अवसर पर अपने विचार हम सबसे साझा करें।
भारत के उपराष्ट्रपति आदरणीय वेंकैया नायडू साहब, भारत के पूर्व राष्ट्रपति आदरणीय प्रणब मुखर्जी साहब, राज्यसभा के उपसभापति आदरणीय हरिवंश जी, भारत सरकार में सूचना और प्रसारण मंत्रालय के मंत्री खेल और युवा मामले के मंत्री आदरणीय राज्यवर्धन सिंह जी राठौड़ साहब, मंच पर विराजमान आदरणीय अमित खरे साहब और भारत के उपराष्ट्रपति के सचिव आदरणीय सुब्बाराव जी, उपस्थित सभी भाइयों बहनों और अन्य सभी उपस्थित महानुभावों, मैं आप सबका हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं। मैं आदरणीय उपराष्ट्रपति वेंकैया नायडू साहब के सानिध्य में 1990 के बाद से लगातार हूं। 96 के बाद लगातार उनका मार्गदर्शन सुनने को मिलता है, चाहे वो लोकसभा मेंबर के रूप में हो, चाहे राज्यसभा के उपराष्ट्रपति के रूप में हो। हमने उनके अनेक भाषण सुने हैं, अनेक भाषाओं का ज्ञान उनको है। त्वरित और सुखद टिप्पणीदायक मार्गदर्शक भाषण उनके रहे हैं। भाषण में बोरियत कभी नहीं होती है। उनकी जो एक के बाद एक तुकबंदी वाली जो शब्दावली है वो सबको आकर्षित करती है। विषयों पर ही केंद्रित रहते हैं और प्रासंगिक विषयों पर ही वो भाषण देते हैं। मैंने एक नहीं अनेक बार उनके भाषणों से और व्यक्तिगत संवाद से बहुत कुछ सीखा है, मार्गदर्शन प्राप्त किया है। निश्चित रूप से उनके उत्कृष्ट भाषणों से ओतप्रोत ये पुस्तक देशवासियों का मार्गदर्शन करेगी और देश हित में उनको प्रेरणादायी संदेश देगी। आज के इस अवसर पर मैं पुस्तक लोग पढ़ें इस प्रकार की अपील करते हुए वेंकैया नायडू जी को हार्दिक बधाई देता हूं, शुभकामनाएं देता हूं। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद, जय भारत।
धन्यवाद माननीय मंत्री महोदय। And now I humbly request Honorable former President of India, Shri Pranab Mukherjee, and our esteemed guests on the dais to release the book of selected speeches of Shri M. Venkaiah Naidu, Honorable Vice President of India. This book has 6 major segments: functioning of legislature, nation and nationalism, polity and governance, economic development, media, India and the world. The e-version of this book is also available online. The e-version is available online on leading e-commerce portals like Amazon, Google, and also you can buy the physical book online through Bharat Kosh portal, which is on the website of Publication Division. And well, as we all know, the e-book provides facility for searching of text. You can copy the text as well as you can share the text on the social media. किसी ने खूब कहा है, अल्फाजों में छिपे ख्याल समझ सको तो कहो, अल्फाजों में छिपे ख्याल समझ सको तो कहो, तजुर्बे की तह में हर उलझन का जवाब मिल जाता है. And when we talk of tajuba, which means experience, then one person who has bold voice of experience, who has in-depth experience on range of important issues is Honorable former President of India, Shri Pranab Mukherjee. In a political career spanning 6 decades, Shri Mukherjee has been the President of India and has also occupied several other ministerial portfolios at the center. It is for your quest for perfection that you've been awarded the Best Administrator in India Award too. एक मुकम्मल शख्सियत जिनकी शोहरत और इज्जत से सारी दुनिया बखूबी वाकिफ है. I take this opportunity to humbly invite Honorable former President of India and recipient of Bharat Ratna, Shri Pranab Mukherjee, to share his views with us and enlighten us with his words of wisdom.
Good evening. Honorable Sri M. Venkaiah Naidu, Vice President of India, Honorable Minister Sri Thawar Chand Gehlot, Honorable Minister Sri Colonel Rajyavardhan Rathore, Honorable Deputy Chairman Rajya Sabha Sri Harivansh, Dr. I.V. Subba Rao, Secretary to the Vice President, Sri Amit Khare, Secretary, Minister of Information and Broadcasting, Excellencies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished members of Parliament, guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start with my observations. With a respectful homage to the martyrs of the ghastly Pulwama terrorist attack which took place just yesterday. I am extremely pained at this act of inhumanity perpetrated by the terrorists. In this hour of grief, we must stand together as a nation. The united front put up by the political parties and the politicians across the spectrum is a sign of that unity. The response of the international community in condemning this barbarous attack in one voice will strengthen our resolve to fight this menace. I believe that this attack will not only bolster the confidence of our security forces, government and the nation as a whole towards strengthening our counter-terrorism measures and be more alert and safe. With these words, I compliment Honorable Vice President Sri Venkaiah Naidu ji for bringing out the first volume of selected speeches of him delivered as Vice President. I have had a long association with Venkaiah ji for more than 2 decades. When I was first elected to Rajya Sabha in April 1998. An accomplished orator, Sri Naidu's speeches reflects the richness of his experience in public affairs, his vision and aspirations, and his expectations and hopes for the future of India. The 92 speeches compiled in this book, carefully selected from over 400 speeches, cover a wide range of issues from education to administration, national security to agriculture. They are an embodiment of the cultural ethos and the constitutional values that form the foundations of this nation. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, while going through the compilation of Sri Naidu's speeches, I realized that his vision of governance in New India is built on the twin pillars of inclusion and sustainability. To my mind, a society that promotes a high degree of social inclusion is one in which members participate meaningfully and actively, have varied opportunities for collective experiences, enjoy freedom and equality, share social experiences, and attain fundamental well-being. To realize the goals of inclusive growth, governments in our country need to direct governance efforts towards a holistic policy and comprehensive and focused strategy of economic and social inclusion. Poverty and unemployment continue to be the central challenges confronting our policymakers. The marginal farmers, landless laborers, and casual workers are the worst sufferers of these deprivations. The Vice President, in his address on the occasion of International Day of Democracy on 15 September 2017 in New Delhi, said, and I quote, "The ultimate purpose of democratic governance is social democracy, to ensure inclusive development and improvement in the quality of life of all citizens, especially those who are the poorest of the poor and those who have been left out of the democratic process," unquote. Starting his political career as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Andhra Pradesh, way back in 1978, Sri Venkaiah Naidu has thereafter held portfolios of rural development, urban development, housing, urban poverty alleviation, information and broadcasting, and parliamentary affairs. He is now the Vice President of India and sits at the steering wheel of one of our greatest institutions as the Chairman of Rajya Sabha. Although it was always across the aisle for me in the Parliament, I have been an admirer of his thoughts and words. They reflect his pride at the syncretic nature of our traditional values and ethos. He envisions the Parliament as a citadel of democracy that is transparent in its accents, responsive to the needs of the people, dedicated to the cause of inclusive development, and dignified in its deliberations and debates, which are inspired by the highest traditions of truth and righteousness. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, our ancient civilizational values related to governance have always been centered around Antodoy and Sarvodaya, under the overarching philosophy of Sarve Sukhina Bhavantu. In modern times, these principles of good governance and inclusive growth find expression in the fundamental rights and more so in the directive principles of state policy in our Constitution. The guidance and directions of the rulers are based on the philosophy of Bahujano Hitayo, Bahujano Sukhayo, as delineated in Rig Veda. Over 70 years old Constitution has not only retained its significance, but has become even more relevant today. The Constitution that we gave to ourselves was drafted by the Sovereign Constituent Assembly of India, representing the will of its people. The Constitution guided us, the legislators, the institutions, and the citizens to forge a nation that secures for all its citizens justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. These goals were to be achieved through a parliamentary system of governance that we chose to ourselves after much deliberation and debate in the Constituent Assembly. Our parliamentary system of government was not a corollary to the Westminster system, but was a natural extension of the self-governing institutions and deliberative representative bodies we had since the Vedic times. Our indigenous experiences with the representative governments stated in the Republic or Ganarajyo of Lichhivi, Kapilavastu, Pava, Kushiara, Ramagramam, Shansagrahi, Piplai, Suprara, Mithila, and Kolanga in the 6th century BC and continued up till 400 AD in various parts of the country. Constituent Assembly, the first representative body of the people of India, the members of which were chosen through indirect election by the members of the provincial legislative assemblies, commenced its momentous task on 9th December 1946. The key factors that led to the adoption of the parliamentary system of government in India were representation of diverse interest groups and the familiarity of the Indian polity with the working of the British system of government. To imbibe these values of representation and act as true representative of the constituents, one needs to continually enhance the quality of debates in the parliament and respect the laws and rules of the legislatures. India is a diverse nation consisting of various groups of people from different classes, castes, religion, cultures, holding varying opinions. Parliament stands for the will and aspirations of the people, which are concretized through the medium of discussions and deliberation. However, over the years, I have noticed with grave concern a decline in the culture of this very debate that keeps the spirit of democracy alive. In his address, on importance of legislatures organized by PRS Legislative Research in New Delhi on 11 December 2017, the Honorable Vice President said, and I quote, "I do share the concern about the quality of debates and disruption of the proceedings. Barring a few parliamentarians, the overall quality of debates has seen a definite downward trend in the last few decades. The quality of interventions and debates can be substantially enhanced with adequate homework and preparation by the members of Parliament," unquote. The Parliament of India is the fountainhead of governance. The function of the Parliament is to make laws, debate, deliberate, and decide on policies. All executive decisions are subject to the scrutiny by the Parliament. However, a very unfortunate trend of undermining the very purpose of Parliament has evolved during the past decade or so. Restoring to disruption as an established parliamentary practice and defining as a constructive deliberative method has led to parliamentary subversion. I am in agreement with the Vice President when he says, and I quote, "Competitive and confrontational politics are understood to be one of the reasons for these disruptions. This is not in the interest of the parliamentary democracy," unquote. The rise in identity-based politics during the last 3 decades has diluted the very representative aspect of the Parliament. An electorate divided on caste and community lines throughout a polarized mandate and rather than pursuing a national agenda. The Parliament ends up pursuing sectarian interests. A strong message that I gather from his speeches is that parliamentarians belonging to different political parties might very well be rivals, but never enemies. The ideas and ideologies might be different, but the allegiance is the same to the voter, to the common man, to the cause of democracy. I would also like to draw attention of all concerned towards some other shortcomings that have crept in over the parliamentary system. Disproportionately large size of the electorate vis-à-vis the number of public representatives is a major concern. There is need to enhance the number of seats in the Parliament in proportion to the population to make the most important democratic institution of the country truly representative Since 1977, there has been readjustment of the territorial areas of the constituency, delimitation, but there has not been any enhancement of number of seats since 1977, and this is truly a question which is to be pondered over seriously. There is inadequate representations of the women in Parliament and the assemblies. Reserving 33% of seats for women is an idea that has to be implemented at the earliest possible. It is already late by 2 decades, and it requires a national consciousness to achieve that desirable results. Deliberate weakening of parliamentary oversight by the executive is another major concern of the system. Despite the challenges and obstacles faced by the parliamentary system in India, I would like to emphasize that it has served the country well. As Sri Naidu rightly pointed out in his address on revitalizing parliamentary democracy in Kolkata, held on 30th December 2017, and I quote, India's parliamentary system has matured over the years and stood the test of the time. There is need to move from Swarajya to Surajya. A clean, competent, people-oriented, proactive administrative leadership is the need of the hour. There is also a need to build a culture of evaluation and constant learning in our governance system and focus upon impact and outcome. I believe in today's era, digital as well as physical media can be utilized as tool for empowerment of people for social mobilization, building partnerships, catalyzing individual and collective actions for betterment of life, promoting peace and harmony, and supporting national reconstruction. I applaud the firm and unrelenting stand taken by the Vice President against sensationalization, paid news, and fake news. He asks media to be responsible, professional, emphatic, and truthful. India is one of the verge on transforming. As the global economy slows down, India is surging ahead with great confidence and full faith in the capacity of its people to excel. This book sends out a message to the people. The message is that of unity. It tells us unequivocally that there are more things that unite us as a nation than those that divide us. We owe to our history and to our posterity to seize the moment and write a new story of a resurgent India. Above all, we need to empower our people, and I believe that this book has the capacity to inspire the leaders. Sri Naidu's energy and enthusiasm are indeed infectious. He speaks from the heart, which makes him a much loved and admired orator. Lacing his speeches with rhymes and humor, he makes sure that his speeches are not just thought-provoking, but also memorable. He stands tall among India's leadership, serving as a great example of dedication, hard work to the youth of the country. He is indeed an example worthy of emulation. I congratulate Ministry of Information and Broadcasting and Publications Divisions for bringing this book out with a beautiful layout and design. I am convinced that it proved to be an inspiring read for us, for its readers. I also take this opportunity to mention the world-class 13 publications that the Publications Divisions brought out on various facets of Rashtrapati Bhavan during my tenure as the President of India. I would like to compliment the Publications Divisions and its Director General, Srimati Sadhana Raut, for their professional and advanced good work. Once again, I congratulate Venkaya ji and wish him good health and many more years and purposeful years in our public life. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Honorable former President of India, Shri Pranab Mukherjee. माननीय, अगर लक्ष्य स्पष्ट हो, इरादे बुलंद हो और मेहनत सच्ची हो तो सफलता कदम जरूर चूमती है। माननीय उपराष्ट्रपति एम वेंकैया नायडू ने एक साधारण पार्टी कार्यकर्ता के तौर पर अपना राजनीतिक जीवन शुरू किया और देश के उपराष्ट्रपति बनने तक का सफर तय किया। आपका जीवन आपकी दृढ़ इच्छा शक्ति, कभी न हार मानने वाले हौसले और मेहनती व्यक्तित्व की बानगी प्रस्तुत करता है। आपके उपराष्ट्रपति और राज्यसभा के सभापति के रूप में 1 साल पूरा होने पर प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी ने पिछले साल सितंबर में एक किताब लॉन्च की, मूविंग ऑन, मूविंग फॉरवर्ड, अ ईयर इन ऑफिस। नायडू जी ने इस पुस्तक में कहा है कि ये एक ऐसा समय है जब देश आगे बढ़ रहा है, जब देश को बदलने के लिए दृढ़ राजनीतिक इच्छा शक्ति की जरूरत है। स्पष्ट है, अभी बहुत रास्ता तय करना बाकी है। हमें एक राष्ट्र के रूप में दृढ़ता से आगे बढ़ना चाहिए। And today, when book on Honorable Vice President's selected speeches is being released, I take this opportunity to humbly request Honorable Vice President to address the August gathering. Please welcome Honorable Vice President.
Most respected former President of India, Sri Pranab Mukherjee ji, Bharat Ratna, Sri Tawarchand Gehlot, Union Minister, Sri Harivamsh ji, Deputy Chairman, Rajya Sabha, Sri Rajyavardhan Rathod, Minister for Information, Broadcasting, Youth Affairs and Sports, Sri Subbarao, Secretary Vice President, Sri Amit Khare, Secretary Information Broadcasting, Excellencies from different countries who have made it possible to come to this, diplomats, my dear brothers and sisters, we have all turned up in large numbers for today's book release function. I am very happy that members of Parliament, Secretaries, Government of India, diplomats, Vice Chancellors, professors, and also the youngsters from different institutions, they have all made it to come to this program. My dear friends, yesterday was a sad day for all of us in India. It was a day when terror raised its ugly head once again. As we pay homage to the supreme sacrifice made by our security personnel at the Pulwama terror attack, we must stand united in our resolve to make every inch of our motherland a safer place. It is unfortunate that our neighbor has been aiding, abetting, funding, training terrorist groups for long. This attempt to destabilize and impede our progress can no longer be tolerated. In fact, there is an urgent need for all countries in the world to come to a firm resolve to combat these forces of terror, these enemies of humanity. Terror has no religion. It's an enemy of humanity. The United Nations must conclude the Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism, CCIT. It should act firmly and effectively to root out terror through a multi-pronged strategy. It should recognize that peace is a prerequisite for prosperity, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals cannot be achieved if there is no peace. I extend a warm welcome to all of you on this occasion of release of my book, containing some of my speeches during my first year in office as Vice President of India and Chairman of Rajya Sabha. I am particularly grateful to Sri Pranab Da, the statesman, politician of our times, for honoring me by agreeing to release this book. He is one of our country's leading lights, tallest political personality, a Ratna who has done Bharat proud. We are indeed delighted to have him with us today. I have been an admirer of Sri Pranab Mukherjee right from my early days in Parliament, irrespective of political affiliations. Though At that time, we belonged to different political parties. His vision, his sagacity, his ability to communicate properly to different sections of the people, his character, his caliber, his capacity, and above all, his memory. I can call him is a living encyclopedia in India who remembers each and every incident, pre-India, post-independent India, any instance with the date, with the name, with the time, he will be able to recollect and guide the nation. I am very happy that today he has agreed to release my book. It was exactly 50 years ago that Pranab Da entered Rajya Sabha for the first time in 1969, and I was re-elected to the upper house 4 times. He was also a member of the Lok Sabha twice during 2004-2012. He has the distinction of being a Minister of Finance, Defence, External Affairs, besides being Deputy Chairman of Planning Commission before becoming the President of India. He is also among the few who has been the leader of both Rajya Sabha as well as Lok Sabha. Known for his phenomenal memory and number of enriching, he has been a spectacular record of contributions as a parliamentarian and an able minister. He is one of the jewels of our country and has been accordingly chosen for the highest civilian honor of Bharat Ratna this year. I owe all of you a brief account of this book based on my mission during the first year in the present role. In a nutshell, it is an earnest endeavor to stir the consciousness of all stakeholders to introspect and lend their might to realize the quest of our nation to reach new horizons. I have made a sincere effort in that direction by recalling our past and reflecting on our present as the young India seeks to define and realize its future. My dear brothers and sisters, you are all aware, the Vice President and President, they have a protocol. They have a system. Earlier, I have been a 24/7 public personality. Meeting people, greeting people, talking with people, walking with people, spending time with the people has been my pastime all these years. The moment I came here, I could not immediately adjust to the protocol and systems and customs of the Uparashtrapati, the responsibility that has been given to me. After discussion, I have decided to continue my interaction with the people in my own way. So I have decided to reach out 5 sections of the people, 1 segments, 1 students and university academicians. So I have been visiting number of universities. Since then, so far I have covered 68 universities in this 1 year and 4 months. Then I also started interacting with the scientists, with the technocrats, going to research laboratories and also technical knowledge centers across the country, right from Arunachal Pradesh to Andaman to Jammu and Kashmir. And third, I have also decided to interact with the farming community because agriculture is the basic culture of India. And 54% of the people still depend on agriculture. And agriculture is facing multi-dimensional challenges. That being the case, I have decided to continue to interact with the farming community, understand their problems, know the challenges, and also come out with some solutions and convey the same to the concerned. And thirdly, fourthly, I have been visiting various cultural bodies because India is rich in culture. Our Indian traditions, our culture, our heritage is looked upon with interest and respect worldwide. We are all aware that we are an ancient civilization and we have great traditions and culture. So we have to preserve that. And part of the life is not only simply economy or having the physical needs, but also have spiritual quest and also culture, dance, music, various artists, all these activities. I have been interacting with them, attending some of their programs and encouraging and also recognizing the talent among the budding youngsters in the cultural field of the country. And fifthly, I have been interacting with public organizations like industry bodies like CII, FICCI, ASSOCHAM, and also with doctors, with actors, and with the tractor-running farmers, and also people in different vocations. I have been attending their national seminars, international seminars, to understand from them what are the problems, what are the experiences, and also suggesting to them that they must move lab to land, and they must pass on this knowledge. After all, science and research and technology is for the betterment of the human beings, and that should reach them directly. That has been my mission all these days, and I have been continuing with the mission. I assure you, I will continue with the rest of my tenure with this mission to reach out the people and also understand the reality of the situation and also know the solutions they have in mind and the problems they are facing. One of the ideas is recalling our past and reflecting on our present as the young India seeks to define and realize its future. This is very much required. Life of a nation, much like individual lives, unfolds in two dimensions of time and space. We need to build the future of our nation based on the past and effectively reasoning through the complexities of present. If we have to build on our past, we should be aware of our past and how ancient India contributed to the world's intellectual, social, and cultural heritage. Undoubtedly, India's past is rich treasure house of extraordinary accomplishments in fields of diverse as astronomy, medicine, metallurgy, mathematics, literature, fine arts, and performing arts. Eminent thinkers like Mark Twain, Max Muller give us an outsider view of ancient India's thought. Mark Twain said, and I quote, "India is the cradle of human race, the birthplace of human speech, the mother of history, the grandmother of legend, and the great-grandmother of tradition. Our most valuable and most instructive material in the history of a man are treasured up in India only." This is what Mark Twain has said. As Max Muller has noticed, ours is a land, quote, "most richly endowed with all the wealth, power, and beauty, in some parts a very paradise on earth." India, my dear brothers and sisters, was known as Vishwaguru once upon a time. And we had highest GDP of those times. And we had best relations with all the other countries. With all this richness, with heritage, with academic and economic power, but India never attacked any country any time. That is the greatness of Indian philosophy. As rightly said by the former president, "Sarve jana sukhino bhavantu, vasudaika kutumbakam." The entire universe is one family. Share and care is the core of Indian philosophy. We should continue with the tradition. That's why I have been really advocating all these thoughts to wherever I go, to whichever community I meet, and also try to communicate them of the past of India, the glory of India, the need to preserve it, and also the need to enrich it further. There are clearly impressive landmarks in the economic history of our country, signifying an expansive growth of trade and economy. According to one estimate, India in the 17th century contributed over a quarter of the global economic output in the 17th century. We have a long history of governance and administrative structure, adopting a collective decision-making approach as seen in Sabhas, Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, Vidhana Sabha, now. But those days, Sabhas, the assembly of all, and in Samiti, the meeting of the informed was there since immemorial. It is easy to romanticize and glamorize the past and fall into the temptation of resting on past laurels. This is not how I see history. History to me is a springboard, an inspirational tale, a motivational call to action. It is a reminder of the heights of creative endeavor reached by our predecessors, the enormous fund of social capital that each one of us has inherited. To ignore our strength accumulated over centuries is unwise. At the same time, we cannot shape our future by merely living in the past. That's the reason why I had called my reflections on 1 year in office as moving on, moving forward. To shape a bright future, we need to shun passivity. Proactive positivity is essential. As our Vedic sages have exhorted, Charaiveti, Charaiveti, Charaiveti. We must keep moving. We must, however, remember to move with a sense of direction. This is what I wanted to convey through my speeches to the farmers, to the students, to the intellectuals, to the scientists, and all our citizens I have interacted with. We need to change with the changing times. We need to adapt to the altered context. We must aim for excellence and be the pace setters. We must stretch our arms towards perfection, as Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore has exhorted us. Dear brothers and sisters, in addition to ancient history, it is equally important, in my view, to study our recent past, especially the freedom struggle and the making of our constitution. This will give us new insights, new surge of energy to find solutions to current day problems. It will also fill us with a renewed, strengthened bond with the people of our land. This is what I have been emphasizing in my conversations. It's not I am going and just giving lectures. I am first hearing them and seeing their presentation, interacting with them, and then finally used to convey my thoughts. For me, nationalism is all about this bond with the people who share a common past, a common present, and a common future. This commonality should promote camaraderie. This implies transcending the limitations of caste, creed, region, and religion. Forging the widest possible bonding in the form of a larger identity. It's all about asserting that I am an Indian first. Everybody should think and act Indian first. Nationalism is an overreaching umbrella under which all our immediate identities are subsumed to form a larger collective. Unfortunately, certain misinformed individuals and organizations are fomenting trouble and creating divisions where none existed before. In a country that has shown the power of peaceful coexistence and non-violence to the world, such acts of bigotry and narrow sectarian should be strongly condemned. While my engagement with farmers, students, and scientists across the states in the country filled me with a tremendous optimism about the future of the country, there are moments when I feel a little unhappy at the way we are conducting ourselves. Probably this is because of my creative dissatisfaction and a certain irresistible urge to remedy the situation. That is my weakness and that is my strength also. All of you would have watched with dismay the way the budget session of Rajya Sabha has just concluded. The President of India, the highest constitutional functionary of our country, and whose name every decision is taken and implemented, addressed the members of both the Houses of Parliament. At the start of the session, it is customary and a constitutional propriety that each member of Parliament adopts a motion of thanks for such an address. But in Rajya Sabha, for over a week, no concern was shown to do so, even though I appealed several times. What could have been a platform for discussing all the burning issues became a platform of confrontation and disruption. Finally, on the last day of the session, the motion was adopted without any debate. A precious opportunity for debate on public issues was lost, and debate was given a rebate. In the interior budget, the government has proposed direct income benefit for over 12 crore small and marginal farmers reeling under distress. While there is a huge political slugfest over the farm sector distress, the parties and the members of the upper house did not deem it fit to discuss and analyze the same and bring fresh ideas to the table. This is one area which needs utmost attention by all, by the parliament, by the Niti Aayog, by the press, by the political parties and people. Because you know that India is a huge country. We have 130 crore population. We have food security, but we don't know what will happen to the future. We must have homegrown food security. You cannot depend on imported food security. You are not a small country like Dubai or Singapore or other countries in size. You are a huge country. So we need to have sustainable development in agriculture and make agriculture viable. People of India expected, many of the members also have given notice for discussion on agriculture, but unfortunately we could not have that because of disruptions. It is very unfortunate that our legislatures, instead of becoming effective forums of debate, are being reduced to disruptive platforms. I'm sorry to say this. This growing tendency, in my view, is a clear negation of this vision of our constitutional makers. In a way, it is an affront to the spirit of the Constitution of India. It is an apathy towards hopes and aspirations of the people. It is utter disregard for people's mandate. It's a betrayal of the people's faith in these pillars of democracy. Dr. Ambedkar had, with great foresight, warned us almost 70 years ago when he said, I quote, "However good a constitution may be, it is sure to turn out a bad because those who are called to work it happens to be bad lot. However bad a constitution may be, it may turn out to be good if those who are called to work it happen to be good lot." See the vision of Dr. Ambedkar. It's a matter of concern that political discourse is reaching a new low in recent years. We should reverse this trend at the earliest. People in public life should understand that they are only rivals, not enemies. We should consider each one of our friends who are in different political spectrum. They are all our rivals only. It's only competition, healthy competition that is required. I have been quoting Pranab Das' mantra of discuss, debate and decide, but not disturb. It is unfortunate that when I meet the leaders every day in the morning, some of them, they tell me, "Sir, today the House cannot function normally because the issue has cropped up and we have instructions from the leaders." It is indeed a sad commentary of our system if the political leadership takes this kind of approach. I would like to share that the leader of opposition, Sri Ghulam Nabi Azad, has often shared his concern with me about the state of affairs, but perhaps there are so many cross currents that are at work. Ultimately, we all seem to be passive spectators or tacit contributors to this theatre of declining standards. Against this backdrop of worrisome functioning of our parliament, state legislatures, situation is no better. This disruptive, dysfunctional tendency needs to be made an election issue. This is the suggestion I want to put before the people. People need to monitor the functioning of the legislature and also the conduct of various parties and the elected representatives. I am not saying it keeping in view this session or this parliament, this tenure, or conduct of this party or that party. We have been witnessing across the country. I have been in public life for more than 40 years. And I have experience of legislature in the state and experience of parliament here for more than 20 years. And I have been a keen reader of what is happening in various legislatures across the country. The story is no different. When you see the scenes happening in different legislatures, you feel pained. Sometimes I say that nothing shall go on record. And I am trying to see that the prestige of the House is preserved. Because the moment you telecast, earlier idea was, if you telecast the live proceedings, then it will have some effect and members will function in a more responsible manner. But the experience seems to be otherwise. So, keeping that in mind, I would like to say that people elect their representatives hoping that they would articulate their hopes and aspirations in the legislature and do the needful by way of making laws and raising issues of public importance so as to make a difference to their lives. Dysfunctional legislature strengthen the demand for various institutions. They say there will be recall also. But to what extent it is possible, feasible in the context of India, that has to be seen. Any short-sighted attempt to cross the line by any institution ends up by harming the spirit of unity and balance. Our judiciary has an important role in making future of our nation. It is a key institution for ensuring the rule of law through timely dispensation of justice. It is disturbing to note the heavy pendency of cases and fact that 67% of the prisoners are under trials. The formidable challenge to our socio-economic development of our country need to be overcome with the judiciary playing a constructive role. We must not allow any erosion of public trust in the institution. The law enforcement and justice dispensation must not only be swift, objective and fair, must appear to be so in public view. The recent happenings, I need not elaborate. They make people sad. Media is an important institution of an effective democracy. It should function medium of empowerment for development through informed action. Media, M-E-D-I-A, medium of empowerment for development and informed actions. That is the media, that is the purpose of media. This is the title of one of the chapters in this book. My suggestion to the media is to correlate the text with the context for informed communication to to the readers and viewers. Media should expose wrongdoers, those who are violating the sanctity of our parliamentary procedure, legislative procedure and decorum. They need to be critical of such behavior rather than highlight disruptive actions. This is not being done by the media mostly, unfortunately. I appeal to the media to focus on the constructive debates, encourage people who come prepared and make substantial contribution to the functioning of the legislature, thereby bringing changes that are required in the policy formulation of the country, rather than highlighting these acts of unparliamentary behavior and giving encouragement for the, if you do like this, then we'll be in the headlines. That is not a headline, it's a deadline. It is not in tune with the main line of the people. That should not be the line of the media. I only hope that they understand this importance also. The need of the hour is to enhance the functioning of various leading institutions like legislature, judiciary, and the executive as per the spirit of our constitution. We need to evolve a new normal in their functioning and ensure a new institutional equilibrium to serve the people of this country. The world order is passing through unprecedented rapid changes, unforeseen directions, posing challenges to our present and future. Young aspiration India is yearning for a transformation. Transformation in governance, transformation in the mindset, transformation in the way we learn, work and live. Ultimately, what each Indian is looking for is to shape our nation into a country that harnesses the innate potential of each individual, to make our country an economically vibrant hub and a country that ensures high quality of life to all its citizens. The prospects of such future are bright. The entire world is looking towards India. The World Bank report, the World Economic Forum report, the ADB report, the International Monetary Fund report, the ratings of various rating agencies, all are focusing on India. India is a place of happening. We must really take up this advantage of the same. The world economy is slowing down, 3%. And our neighbor, powerful economy, China, also is 6.8. India is the only country which is moving at 7.3, 7.4, 7.5. Thanks to the collective efforts of the government at the center and the state, and also the local bodies, this is becoming possible. So we must all develop positivity, and we must strengthen our institutions, legislature, judiciary, executive, bureaucracy. All the efforts are needed on the part of all stakeholders to do their best to convert this into a great opportunity. The key challenge lies in handling our present to lay a strong foundation for such a future. We have no option but to transform Swarajya we have achieved into a Swarajya for all. Development has no meaning unless it reaches the last man. Antyodaya, just now Pranabda has quoted. Gandhiji's vision, Deendayal Upadhyaya's vision, Ram Manohar Lohia's vision, Dr. Ambedkar's vision, Antyodaya, जो अंतिम पंक्ति में बैठे, उनका उत्थान पहले होना चाहिए. That should be the agenda of the country. Development, development and development alone must become the agenda of all political parties. Divisive tendencies must be curbed. Divisive thinking must be given up, and the positivity must come into public life rather than opposing everything. Opposition has got a right to oppose. That's why I say, let the government propose, opposition oppose, and let the House dispose. That is the way the House should function. We are likely to be the world's fifth largest economy, soon and possibly. The largest in due course. While faster economic growth has its own advantages, we need to ensure inclusive development. Every section of the society, the downtrodden, the suppressed, the oppressed people, the poor people, the agricultural labor, they all should feel that they have a stake in the developmental story of the country. The fruits of development should reach them. We need to make our growth more sustainable. I have repeatedly underscored in my speeches that there are favorable winds of change today. There is a sound institutional structure in place. The economic fundamentals are strong. There is a demographic dividend waiting to be realized. 65% of the Indian population is below 35 years. No other country has got such a young population. We must harness this. We have to only move from ideas to implementation, from rhetoric to action. My dear friends, as I said at the start, my mission as articulated in this book is to connect the India of the past with the present and look at the future possibilities through the eyes of our academic and scientific institutions, through our youth, women and farmers, through our entrepreneurs and industrialists. In short, I believe there are numerous architects of tomorrow's India who just needed a facilitative, responsive, encouraging state to unleash the force of growth. Of particular interest to me is agriculture. I believe significant structural transformation is required in order to make agriculture more profitable and sustainable. I take inspiration from the census-building approach towards the common concerns exposed by Vedic seers. Let us all gather in assembly and speak with one voice, Vedas. Let our minds be one of accord, not discord. May our concern be the same. Let the assembly consist of equals. Let our minds be alike and also our thoughts. Let our hopes and aspirations be the same, and let our hearts beat in unison so that we may live in harmony and happiness. This is a saying from Veda. We must draw inspiration from this. My effort after I took over as the Vice President has been to focus on issues that are crucial for India's development. My extensive interaction with the wide cross-section of the population have convinced me that a change is possible if we can get our act together. My dear sisters and brothers, let me now touch upon another important aspect of our democratic structure. In a few months from now, the country will go to polls. I have had a dream to transform the quality of our democracy. Free and fair elections have been the cornerstone of our democracy. But what about the political process itself? I would like to see more men and women being elected as legislators and parliamentarians with a national outlook and having in them certain characteristics which I have usually described as the virtues of 4 C's: character, caliber, capacity and conduct. We the people have to ensure that the vicious 4 C's, other C's, cash, caste, community and criminality are no longer allowed to vitiate the political system. This is my advice to the people. Only then we can proudly say that ours is not only the largest democracy but also one of the best in the world. We need higher standards of accountability in public life. Political parties must evolve a code of conduct for their functionaries. The public at large has a right to know the contribution of their representatives to development of the constituency and their conduct in the legislature. They should demand a report card from the public representatives and make a critical assessment of their effectiveness. This ideally should be a decisive factor and yardstick at the time of voting in the elections. To conclude, I need to place on record my appreciation to my Secretary Dr. I.V. Subbarao and other officials in my Secretariat for their diligence in putting together this compilation, adequately capturing the various canvas covered during 1 year. I also compliment Minister, Secretary, Information and Broadcasting, and more importantly, Director General of Publication Division and her team for tirelessly working on this project for over 6 months. I once again convey my gratitude to Bharata Ratna, Sri Pranab Mukherjee, for gracing this occasion and releasing this book. I can only tell you, friends, frankly, I have been always speaking from the bottom of my heart. I have that habit of speaking frankly. I do not have any great background of family. I come from an agriculture family, humble agricultural family. Of course, I am proud of it. I have no political people in my family. But commitment to the cause and constant endeavor to learn more. I used to study the speeches of the great legislators in Andhra Pradesh Assembly. I used to go to the library and read what Thinneti Viswanathan has said, what Tharimal Nagireddy has said, what Pillaramari Venkateswara has said, what Zupudi Agninana has said, what other leaders have said. I used to read each and every this thing. Then after I came to Parliament also, in national politics also, I used to read Syama Prasad Mukherjee's speeches, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru's speeches, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel's speeches and also his life. And also the speeches made by great parliamentarians like Hiren Mukherjee, Bhupesh Gupta, Jyotirmay Basu, Indrajit Gupta, to Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Nath Pai, Pilu Modi, Minu Masani. These great parliamentarians, they have enriched our Indian parliamentary system. I try to always read, try to understand and to the extent possible. I have also gone through the life and teachings and preachings of the first president, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishna, a genius person who has occupied this office earlier, and also go through the speeches made by different presidents of different tenures, and also life and teachings and preachings of Abdul Kalam, and also regularly I used to follow the speeches made by Pranab Da in various occasions. That is the treasure of knowledge I acquired, not because of any hereditary thing, not because of any other consideration. So I appeal to the younger generation in public life, and I appeal to the legislators and parliamentarians, please focus your attention. Go through the speeches made, contributions made, traditions established, levels of debate they have taken the parliament, legislature, and see to it that you also live up to the expectations of the people. People have great expectations. Legislators and parliamentarians are idols for the people, leaders of the people. There is a saying, Yadha Raja Tadha Praja. Not our Raja who is sitting here, member of parliament. Raja means king. If the ruler behaves in a dignified manner, if the various functionaries in public life, parliamentarians and legislators and heads of various departments, if they conduct themselves, the country will be benefited by their rich experience, and others also will follow. I only conclude by saying, Sri Advaniji used to tell, one of the senior parliamentarians of our present day generation, used to say that ideal behavior is more important than ideology. సిద్ధాంతం కన్నా ఆచరణ మిన్నా ఆయన ఎప్పుడు చెబుతుండేవాడు. More than an ideology, ideal behavior is more important. So country is watching. The younger generation have got higher aspirations and expectations. The world is looking to us. So we must behave properly and act together. That is only my wish, and I hope things will improve in future. Things will improve in future in the coming days in Parliament. After this round of elections, then again when the Parliament meets, I hope there is an improvement in the conduct of the legislatures and Parliament, and every political party will think in that direction. Thank you very much for responding to our invitation. Coming in, as I said in the beginning, coming in large numbers, different sections of the public life, they all have come here today. And I would like to thank once again the Information and Broadcasting Ministry for this publication, and also thank the Minister, Sri Tawarchand Gehlot, Senior Minister in the government, and particularly my thanks are once again to the great statesman, politician, Bharat Ratna, Sri Pranab Da Mukherjee. Thank you very much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Honorable Vice President, for your inspiring and motivating words. और कार्यक्रम के अंत में मैं सूचना प्रसारण सचिव माननीय श्री अमित खरे को धन्यवाद ज्ञापन के लिए मंच पर आमंत्रित करती हूं.
Honorable Vice President Shri M. Venkaiah Naidu ji,